I'm excited to introduce Lexi McGivern to you all. I met her at Kessler while I was inpatient, and she was a fantastic physical therapist there. So when I found out that she went private and founded Neuro Home Wellness, I was so excited. I called her immediately. Having her actually come to my home and work with me here in my own environment has been a huge game changer. So please tune in and hear about all of her experience throughout the home healthcare industry and beyond that. So I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Thank you. Hey, Lexi, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Yeah. So you just got back from a trip, right?
I did. I don't know if you can see my skin peeling, but a little too much sun.
Oh no.
But I'm happy to be back. And it was very short, just Thursday to Monday. So,
Oh, great. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So you've had a lot of interesting experiences throughout the healthcare system, though, along your career. And I know you've told me some stories from before you were even a PT. I'm just curious if you could just kind of run me through how you kind of went from the beginning to where you are today.
Oh, geez. Well, I don't know what I would consider the beginning, but
Okay.
I decided to be a PT pretty early on because I played sports, just
Hmm.
like you were talking about. Everyone associates PT with sports. So I played
Hmm.
basketball in college. And so I was like, oh, I'm just going to be a PT. So I went to University of Scranton, started PT school. Well, you do undergrad and then PT school. And I started doing
Right.
orthopedic sports like everyone thinks. And
Hmm.
I hated it. And I was already like 5 years into school. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what am I going to do?
Yeah. 'Cause people don't realize how much school it
Yes, you have to
requires.
go for 7 years, right?
Oh
And
my gosh.
you can't really you can obviously change your you could leave the doctorate program, but it
Hmm.
doesn't transition into anything else that easily. It's pretty niche. So I was like,
Right.
okay, I'm not sure what I want to do, but I'm just going to stick with it. Maybe I'll find something within it that I like more. So I
Hmm.
actually got the opportunity at my school to work at a pro bono clinic, which
Hmm.
I want to see if there's some around here because I loved doing it. And when I got to run it, and it was this awesome opportunity, which is why I think I fell in love with the business side because that was like my first example of it. I got to do
Oh yeah.
the whole like scheduling and setting up students in there and helping with the faculty. So it was really really cool
Right.
for me. But I had my first individual who came in who had suffered from a stroke, and so
Hmm.
immediately I was like, this is what I want to do. This is it. Like I
Wow.
loved it. I love the client was like the sweetest guy. His wife was awesome. He just wanted to work hard, which was my favorite part. And so I was like, this is great. So I took a job as an aide in a neuro rehab up in Scranton immediately. So
Hmm.
I got to kind of have more access to it.
Hmm.
Then I graduated. I went to Mount Sinai. I did a neuro residency there, which was one of I have to say, the
Nice.
coolest experience of my life. I had awesome mentors, but the reason I loved it so much is because they took you from the neuro ICU and then you
Okay.
went into acute care, which is as you know, after you discharge from the ICU, still stay in the hospital system, but you go into the acute care section. And then they transfer
Right.
you to rehab, which was awesome. So similar to Kessler, like that inpatient rehab, and then to outpatient. So I actually had clients that I saw from beginning to end, just timing wise, where I got to
Yeah.
follow them through their
Yeah.
care. And
That is so cool. I mean, I've heard great things about Mount Sinai, but
yes, they
being
were
able to see the
phenomenal.
full life cycle of it, that is so cool.
Yeah, and I think, and then now doing home care, I get to see I've not, I don't know everyone's experiences, obviously, but I got to see some
Mhm.
people from start to, pretty far into their care. And I feel like it just gave me such a broader perspective on therapy where it's
Oh yeah. I mean, you've seen me all the way for, the
yes,
full like over 2.5 years now.
right.
Yeah.
And you get to just I don't know. Some people ask me oh, what got you into it? And it's as soon as you see that, like
Mhm.
my clients, including you, are the most inspiring people in the world.
Mhm.
Something happened that you had no control over, but then you just turn into these fighters through everything. And to be able to see
Yeah.
people from start to then go get married and go do these things and figure out
Mhm.
ways to be more independent and just conquer the world in a new way. It is
Yeah.
just, I feel inspired every day. So it kind of Mount Sinai gave me that starter, and then I went to Kessler, and then I decided to start my own home care business, and
Mhm.
hopefully it just keeps going from there. But I think I got to do the residency, and I think it just completely changed my whole outlook on it. I feel very lucky to have the job that I have. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And that's It is pretty amazing that you've gotten to do, every little step along the way. And
Mhm.
so once you made the choice to go from, working at Kessler and then actually starting up your own business, I mean, that had to be a really scary leap, right?
Oh, it was terrifying. And it still is.
Yeah.
It's so funny because you're catching me today when my goal is to open a clinic in New Jersey. Like I want it to be like a
Mhm.
gym. And I know we've talked about it, but I was like, this
Yeah.
is my dream. So I'm looking at a space and today I go in and they're asking me about floors and tiles and washing machines and, all these different things. And I was like, I don't even own a house. I don't know. I don't know anything about anything. I'm just a PT. And they're like, okay, we're going to figure it out. Like, I think that it's not the PT side. I've always just
Mhm.
loved. I can just dive into it, but it's all the other stuff on top of it where it's like, I don't know. I didn't go to school for any of this, So learning
Yeah.
that has been great, but definitely overwhelming. But I think for
Mhm.
me, it's like, I just want there to be more. Like Kessler is amazing, but then when you leave and then you
Yeah.
don't have outpatient, then what's the next step? And what are things that can be an
Yeah.
option for you, And so
Yeah, and I think that's definitely something that everybody really needs because,
mhm,
as great as it was to be with Kessler, and obviously the best part of Kessler is the fact that the PTs and OTs care so much and they're
mhm,
so involved, which is the best part of it. And then you leave and you go home and it's like you fell off the face of the earth
right.
and you feel just kind of isolated. And that's, my husband and I were just talking about it today where we're just like, there's no follow up. There's no
Yeah,
network of support for you to lean on. There's no, it's just, you're just gone. And so
right. And I
I think
think
that's definitely the kind of thing that everybody needs.
exactly. And I think that's the thing. A lot of people have asked me, like, well, why switch out of home care, which I love,
Mhm.
I do. And I said, the hardest part about home care for me is that I meet all these amazing people. And a lot of them are similar ages, going through similar things, and having
Mhm.
very similar experiences, but they don't see each other. And like,
Yeah.
HIPAA is a thing. So I can't just be like, you know what? I think you should call, XYZ. You guys would be best friends. You could connect, I can't do that. So like to have that space where people can just connect and like, hopefully we can have times for, support groups, things like that. But I don't even know that it's
Yeah.
always that. I think it's typically better in just a more organic, like, oh, I'm coming in. I see you at the same time every time, things like that. I
Yeah.
just think it builds that community and like it's exactly what you guys are trying to build, which is why I was so excited when I saw you posting about it because
Yeah.
there just isn't that many resources right now to feel like you're not the only one going through it. And,
Mhm.
like I'm in people's homes. I see how it affects their marriage. I see how it affects their home setup. I see how it affects their social life. I
Mhm.
see all these kinds of things. And it's like, nobody should feel like they're going through it alone. Because the truth is, there are people going through it. But once you leave,
Mhm.
it is hard to like, I would think it's hard to connect.
Mhm. Well, it is, yeah, because I mean, not only are you transitioning, back into the world after, because when you're at Kessler, that does feel like its own little bubble. And
Oh,
you
of
kind of get
course.
used to being in that little bubble
Mhm.
and you don't feel weird about the fact that you're disabled because everybody is, or
Right.
everybody is a PT and or a doctor. And so
Yeah.
you feel kind of comfortable with it, but then you go home and everyone you pass on the way to your front door is walking.
Right.
And you're the only one that's not. And so it's hard to even just I think it took me 2 weeks before I even left the house. And I know that that's fast for most people.
Oh,
I've
I
talked to
think that's
some
very
people who didn't
fast.
leave their
Yeah.
house for years.
Yeah.
Um, but it takes a while to actually feel comfortable going back out in the world. And I've heard that Kessler used to do a lot more of actual sort of field trips out
Mhm.
into the world when people were sort of in inpatient care, which I
Yeah.
think would be a great idea. But I can imagine that logistically that probably is difficult.
Yeah, it's funny. I never experienced it, but I graduated right at COVID. So I think
Hmm.
so many of those programs, unfortunately, got canceled during COVID
Hmm.
and then they just never got restarted. And hopefully now, as we get further and further from it, things like that,
Yeah.
because I think it's such a stark transition. Like I always say,
Hmm.
like, and it's not just, it's also like the amount of therapy you're getting, everything, like your whole day, everything gets flipped upside down. It's like, oh, well, I was in therapy 3 hours a day and I had this routine and all this. And then
Yeah.
now I have maybe 3 hours a week of therapy. And I
Hmm.
have to also, they did family training with me 3 times, but now it's just us. And can
Hmm.
I FaceTime someone and clarify things? And, like, it's
Yeah.
very hard. Like, it's not
Well,
an
yeah,
easy
you
thing,
go from
right?
living in this hospital environment where every little thing that you might need is going to be really easy to get,
Right.
and you're interacting with anywhere from like 20 to 50 people a day,
Right.
and you're able to have all of that, personal interaction and all
Yeah.
these people there for you. And then you go home and it's maybe you and one other person or a couple other people.
Right.
And so yeah, it's a very stark contrast.
Yeah.
And yeah, I my fear is that a lot of these things got shut down during COVID, and no one's going to want to spend enough money to bring them back up. That's my big fear.
Yeah.
But I think
I
at
don't
least if
know. I
people are
think,
trying to create more resources outside of it, hopefully
yeah.
it'll help.
And I think, like, the one thing that I always say, and I don't know if I would love to know if you felt the same way, but like places like Mount Sinai, like Kessler, like I'm sure Burke and all these other places that offer this kind of therapy, it's normally like very energetic, passionate people coming into it. And I do think like
Yes.
the more time passes, the more people that come into it and really want to bring those programs back, like the more they
Mhm.
will come back. I just think unfortunately, it takes time and it takes funding. So it takes a lot of like convincing, to bring them
Yeah.
back. But yes, I do think like, I think part of it is more need to exist. And then the other part is like things need to be marketed more and people need to know
Mhm.
more about resources, because I think there's more resources than we pitch. There's not enough of them, but there's more resources than we pitch, but there's no like, okay, let me just look right here and then everything pops up. And it's difficult. It's
Oh,
difficult
yeah.
to find them. And you've seen that. You find
Mhm.
different ones and you're like, oh, I wish I knew about this sooner. Or,
Oh, yeah. I mean, both resources and treatment options and
yes.
procedures. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you just told me last week about how you can get Botox in your Achilles tendon
Yeah.
to stop foot drop. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
How has nobody told me that this is a possibility yet? I had no idea.
Yeah.
My feet have just been getting tighter and tighter, and I had no clue.
Yeah.
And it's like that kind of thing where I'm like, how am I not aware of this? I mean, I also didn't have a urologist for 2 years.
That would
So
help me. Yeah.
I know.
Well,
Yeah.
then, yeah, and I think that's the tough part is I see that so much more often. And yes, with spinal cord injury, but like a lot of
Mhm.
times with like when I get referred Parkinson's patients and things like that, where I'm like, okay, you need to get set up with this doctor, and then this and this. They're like, oh, and
Mhm.
no one told me, and then they do, and I'm not the one bringing the resources; the doctors are. But like, it's like, oh, I didn't know these
Mhm.
options existed, and I think that's the tough part
Right.
is that like I think it's getting a lot better. Like I know you've had, for instance, a great experience at
Mhm.
Summit with that interdisciplinary approach. But like
Yeah.
it's harder for individuals with conditions that aren't as common. So like especially spinal cord injury, it's not that well
Mhm.
known against all different disciplines, right? So then you have to really
Right.
find the ones in each discipline, like
Mhm.
urology, like physiatry, that really hone in on spinal cord injury, um,
Mhm.
which is it's
Yeah.
niche. It really is, but we have to like make sure people are getting those options or getting tone management options or range of motion, like
Right.
preventative things. And it's just, you don't know what
Mhm.
you don't know.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of people also don't realize both, outside of the industry and, within this is that continued PT and continued OT is really good for you, not just for
Yeah.
the first year, maybe for the first 2 years. And so I think people don't realize, what the goal is in continuing that.
Yeah.
So when you're working with people, years beyond their injury, what are the goals that you're trying to instill in them moving forward?
So I always say this, like, your biggest goal in life for everyone, right, is
Mhm.
being as independent and strong as you possibly can, right?
Mhm.
So if I were to just not, for instance, when I started working, I didn't go to the gym, I didn't lift, I didn't do anything. Like, I wasn't a great therapist because I couldn't do a lot of the transfers. I couldn't do any of the
Mhm.
things I needed to do to optimize my independence at my job, right?
Mhm.
So the one thing that I like to say to people is like, I think sometimes we get in this habit of saying, after a spinal cord injury, for instance, you're going to see gains for 1 to 2 years. People hear that
Mhm.
over and over and over again. And so
Yep.
after 1 to 2 years, they get this approach that this is the best I'm going to be. And that's like telling me that if I went out and started training for a marathon and I just decided to go run it, and it took me God knows how long, if I just ran right now,
Yeah.
6 hours, that if I trained, it would always be 6 hours. But that's not true. If
Yeah.
I train,
No,
my
that's a good
time's
analogy.
going to
Yeah.
come down, right? And
Hmm.
it's the same for everyone. Now, we can't bring back muscle groups that maybe your body hasn't given you or things like that, but you can strengthen the ones that exist. You can improve your range of motion if you have
Yeah.
areas that need it. You can improve your mobility. You can find new adaptive techniques. So it's always like, for me, it's like stagnancy or like not having any kind of programming. That's always going to lead
Hmm.
to your independence decreasing no matter what.
Right.
You're going to get more contractures, you're going to get weaker, you're
Hmm.
not going to have as much endurance. Like, you see it in how
Sure.
you can now, I remember you saying this and it was like such a great point. When you first used to sit in that chair, it was like, oh my
Hmm.
God, I couldn't sit in my manual chair for a minute without being in
Hmm.
agonizing pain. And then it's 10 minutes
Yeah.
and then it's 20 minutes. And then, okay, I couldn't push it this
Hmm.
far. And then I couldn't push it this far. And so I think like,
Yeah.
even if it's not therapy, I think it's programming. And then I think the maintenance of therapy coming in here and there and adding into it is saying like, okay, well, this is what we're missing from it. Or you're strong as heck, but you know what? You're not propelling your wheelchair that far because the wheelchair is not, these are the adjustments we need to make because you are so different
Yeah.
than when it was made for you 2 years ago, right? So like,
Yeah.
here's all
Sure.
these different adjustments that we can make here because your body habits has changed or your strength has changed or,
Hmm.
X, Y, and Z has
Yeah.
changed. And I think the thing is that you can always keep improving something in your life, right? Like, it's
I
not
mean, yeah, because if you hit a plateau, depending on what you're doing, you're either going to go up or you're going to go down from that plateau.
exactly, that's the
And
thing.
you
And
definitely don't
so,
want to go down.
yeah, exactly. And like, the truth is like, uh, I don't love the term, but there is something called maintenance therapy where it's like, okay, you've reached
Mhm.
this awesome potential, but if you're doing nothing, you're going to descend, right? So then it's like,
Yeah.
okay, what are the things that I can do to maintain it? And then
Mhm.
if we can, what are the things to do to improve it? But in general, like, even years later, I have a client now that I've now seen, I want to say I've seen some longer, but this one I've seen for 2 years. And
Mhm.
his injury was a year and a half before I met him. He
Okay.
makes gains every single week, but he has a program. He does it every day. He's not in therapy. So he just keeps getting strong. I mean, I'm amazed all the time by my clients, but he has far surpassed my expectations because he's so
Wow.
like diligent with it. And I think the consistency of like people
Yeah.
sticking to it, that's when you really see it, just as if
Mhm.
pre-injury, if I always like to use the analogy like, okay, well, if
Yeah.
I go to the gym 3 days a week for a month, am I going to
Mhm.
look like Arnold Schwarzenegger? And everyone says, no, you're probably going to look like about the same. And it's like, okay,
Mhm.
so you can't expect that just in 3 hours of therapy a week for a month, you're going to have these
Yeah.
huge gains. It's length of time, right? Like, it
Mhm.
takes time to build strength. It takes time. So it's like sticking to that programming
Mhm.
on those days you're either not there or sticking to 3 days a week. But then when you take a break from therapy, you do those programs on your own, right? Like, it's
Mhm.
consistency. It's really a less about how much you do each session and how much you actually do long term.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think that it is kind of like it's a sad sort of fatalistic thing that a lot of people adopt because they hear that 1 year or 2 year maximum of
Mhm.
gains thing that's out there. I mean, I've heard it in so many different
Mhm.
publications and all over the place where people are just like, "Oh, you've been injured for a couple of years. Okay, so that's
So that's it.
that's as far as you're
Well,
gonna go." And you're just like,
and what
"Yeah,
that statistic is talking about is they're more so talking about something called spontaneous recovery. And what that means is basically, what is the body going to give back to you?
okay,
Right? So
right,
they're saying like in the first 1 to 2 years, you're going to see the most spontaneous recovery. They're not saying it's impossible to have return after, but
hmm,
statistically speaking, that's when you see the most. But then I think
okay,
because you hear it over and over again, it's like, oh no, that's just the most
hmm,
I can get better. And it's like, no, now with those muscle groups that you have, with everything that you have, now we got to strengthen you up, get you your program, do these
right."
things. And then from there, you can continue to 100% make functional improvements, but you may not
Mhm.
get that spontaneous recovery that people associate with that healing process,
Well,
right?
right, because you can build strength, you can hone
Yeah.
your technique, you can
Yeah.
find, new functional ways of doing stuff. And I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to recovery and therapy and things like that. I
Yeah.
mean, like the amount of people when I was first injured who were asking like, "Oh, so what's the likelihood of you walking again? Like what's the percentage?" And I was
Mhm.
like, Yeah, doctors don't do that. Doctors don't really sit down with you and say, you have a 5% chance of walking. And I
Right.
was like, I know people say that a lot. I don't know where they're getting it
Yeah.
because I haven't heard anyone say that.
Right. And the truth is, like, doctors could base it off your ASIA score and things like that, but as you've
Okay.
seen, every spinal cord injury is completely different. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that, and you could speak to this more, but I think that is one of the hardest things because we get the question all the time. Well, and I have one client, she asks me every week, she goes,
Yeah.
no, you don't know the answer, but like, when am I going to be better? And I'm like, I don't have the answer. I can tell you these,
Yes.
and these factors are good
Mm-hmm.
and that you're making gains. And this is what I see week to week. And more importantly, month to month.
Yeah.
We can't tell you because there's no scan. Even when you have your injury, there's not an MRI that says, oh, okay, so
No.
6 months from now, you're going to have this return and this return and this return.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they don't know in that process. So it's such a hard thing because we don't know. Like, we're almost along
Mm-hmm.
for the ride with you. And it's just our job to help you utilize whatever the body does give back because we can't facilitate
Yeah.
return, but we can, once we get the return, then we can kind of help you pick up and help with that function.
Right. I almost wish that the term spinal shock would actually be renamed or redefined in some way because I remember being first told about spinal shock and like, oh, okay, so your spine is bruised, your spine is hurt, it's protecting itself, and at some point spinal shock's going to wear off and you're going to get all this new function. And I just went, oh, so I just have to wait for the spinal shock to wear off, and then suddenly everything's just going to jump back.
Right, and then you're clinging to that, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard because I've seen, like I've definitely had clients who then they also hear the opposite, and right away, right at like injury, someone will come in and say to them, I'm really sorry, but you're never going to walk again. And it's like,
Oh, wow.
okay, they don't have that information either. And then they do. And then there's like this hatred toward the healthcare system because they're like, they lied to me. And I'm like,
True.
they didn't purposefully lie, but maybe they shouldn't have given you that information at the time because none of us know. Like, I have seen everything in between where it's like there have been people where if you told me at Kessler how they would be 5 years later, I was 100% wrong. And I've been doing this for years now. And I have mentors who have been doing it even longer and they get shocked too, where it's like, well, based on, statistics, that shouldn't have happened, but it did. So I think it's so hard because statistics are just statistics. They're not facts,
True. Yeah. I mean, there's no reason why I should have triceps. There's absolutely no reasons for it.
And you didn't have them.
Yeah. And I was definitely told early in my recovery, oh, you don't have any triceps. Your hands aren't going to come back. Yeah. And I was like, I definitely have some tricep. Like I might not have, but now I have fairly serious triceps. And I'm like, okay, my hands didn't come back, but I do have the triceps.
Right.
But it's just, I remember being told after that, because of course I was crying in the gym. I remember being told by my OT, yeah, you can't listen to that because literally anybody who tries to tell you that they know what's going to happen to you, they're wrong. Right. And she was like, I'm not trying to say that anybody doesn't know what they're talking about, but they don't.
Right. And that's the truth of it. Is
okay, good.
I think it's hard because people ask the questions, but the truth is none of us should ever give definitives. We don't know. We don't know. There's no test for it. And we shouldn't speak out of turn because we don't know. And I think there's two opposite ends of the spectrum, right? There's giving false hope where then, you have individuals like you where it's like, okay, well, they told me it's going to wear off. So I just got to wait it out. And then you're like grossly disappointed. Right. And then there's the opposite end where it's like, don't give them hope. And it's like, that's not optimal for recovery either, right? People have to have hope.
Yeah.
And
that's true. Trampling on somebody's dreams is not going to help them recover.
No, they just had some, and I think like somewhere in the middle, and I don't know exactly what that perfect combination is. I'm sure I don't have it, but it's like giving hope, but also giving the understanding that like you are going to live this beautiful life no matter what. And you maybe can't see it in this exact moment, but you are going to find a way, and all my clients do, to just push through, and you're going to live a beautiful life. And it might look different, right? But also, like, I would say my clients change more lives than anyone I've ever met because they take their experience and they are so resilient and they just bring it into all different areas of life. And I think you learn so much about resilience and the power of like thought and the like how deep you really go as a person, because I mean, there are
True.
days where like I will be about to go into a session and I'm upset about something so minuscule that
Mhm.
feels big to me. And I go into a session and then like my client will just rip through the session so amazing. And I'm like, what am I even worried about? Like, it doesn't matter. And these are the
Yeah.
important things. And you just work hard and you do the best you can every day. Like, that's all anybody can do, you know?
Hmm. No, totally. And I think that's you're spending a lot of, close personal time with people and seeing how they're living their lives every day. And it is pretty amazing to see what people are able to accomplish.
Yeah.
And so it's really fantastic. And one of the things I like to say is that it's a club that none of us ever wanted to join,
Mm-mm.
but it's one that we're all very proud to be a part of, I
Right.
think.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to see what's possible, but also you're going to have a hard time reaching that if you don't have the right support and if you
Right.
don't have the right resources
Right.
there for you.
Right. No, and I mean, I think again, that's why I love what you guys are building, because I told you the one day when I came over, I was
Yeah,
like, I just told my client about the 10%. He was pumped. And when I tell you pumped, he was
that's
so
awesome.
truly excited because he's like, this is what I've been looking for, because, he has his friends
Hmm.
outside of everything going on, but then he feels pretty alone at some points where he doesn't have
Hmm.
anyone to relate to, and he wants to do certain things and he'd like to ask people like, what do you do best? But like, he doesn't really have a group, like,
Yeah, I
even when I
mean,
just want a little
and
question of like,
Instagram and Reddit only go so far.
exactly. And you really got to look, And so
Yeah,
like,
and then there's also the added awkwardness of,
yeah,
okay, now there's a stranger reaching out to me on social media. How much can I trust this? How comfortable can I be with this?
right,
And
right.
yeah, so there's a lot with that. And I remember because when I first saw anything about the 10%, I wasn't involved with them yet. I just saw it as a potential consumer and was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I
Yeah,
can't believe that this is going to happen. This is so cool. And of course, it's taken longer than anyone would expect because building an app is crazy complicated.
yeah.
But that is what's going to be cool to be able to do that because even in this community, I mean, Kessler's 10 minutes down the road. You'd think that I'd be running into wheelchair users left and right.
Mhm.
I don't. It doesn't happen. It's
Oh,
very rare.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
100%, 100%.
Mhm.
And I think that's like where an app like that, and then hopefully
Yeah.
places that you can, gyms and places that you would just organically meet people and be able to bond.
Mhm.
I do think it can make all the difference for making life even just that much better, And
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, if you find yourself going home after inpatient therapy and you don't really know what to do and you don't really know who to talk to, being able to jump into an area where everybody is there for the same purpose and everybody is there to talk to one another and get close,
right.
I think that would be really cool. And it's definitely something that I know would have helped me
Yeah.
because, even just having, Instagram and access to social media and see how other people live their lives, that was huge.
Yeah.
But then there's that wall where you don't feel like you can penetrate and actually meet anybody.
Right. And you don't want to be like too pushy. Like the same client that I was just talking about, he found someone his age who had something similar go on, and it was like the best day of his
Mhm.
life because he got to follow his page and see what he's doing. And we
Yeah.
use a lot of the tips and tricks from his videos, like where
Oh,
we
cool.
made adjustments for how he got in and out of the car and how he got his chair in and all these different things. So we
Nice.
like use Instagram in that sense. But then, like,
Mhm.
you don't want to be too much and be like reaching out to these people all the time. Like, you want to
Yeah.
know that it's a welcome environment to be like, oh, hey, like, also on top of this, I'd like to be friends because,
Mhm.
I
I mean, yeah,
we can
because
relate to each other.
I've definitely had those moments where I have tried to reach out to somebody and then I realize, oh wow, I came on really strong.
Yeah.
Because finding somebody's page like that, it really can feel like a game changer and you
Yeah.
feel very emotional about it. And then you're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, hi, your page is so amazing. I'm so excited to meet you. And then you're just like, oh my God, I came off like such a weirdo. And that wasn't my goal.
But
Because I mean, yeah, we've all also had people reach out to us who are not disabled and really weird.
well, and I think, and you're the first person who taught me about that, but then it makes you more hesitant, right? So like
Mm.
you just, it's a hard like give and take,
Hmm.
right? Where it's like you don't want to come
Yeah.
on too strong, but you also want to be attracting the right kind of people. It's like
Yeah.
anything else, but
That's true. I save screenshots of the weird ones. I have a weirdos folder on my computer.
oh my God, you should start an Instagram page just for that. I'm pretty sure you could go viral.
I was thinking about doing videos for reading mean comments because I have always loved those segments where celebrities read mean tweets. And I was like, oh my gosh, now I have my own mean comments I could read. Something I never thought I'd be excited for, you know?
I couldn't I get like, when I tell you I get heated when I read some of these Instagram comments, like
Mhm.
full blown heated, where I'm like, I am going to go off on this person. And it's like, that's
Mhm.
probably not productive either, right? Like, I need to take a step back. But then it's
Yeah.
like, and I, I think the truth of the matter is, and you can tell me your opinion, but I feel like, and I see it with my family and things like that. Some people are
Mhm.
just like nervous to ask questions about things, or like they think it's like
Oh
going
yeah, I
to,
think some people are nervous.
and
And I've definitely had people go like, "Hey, do you mind if I like ask you a question about your wheelchair or about your disability?" And I'm just like, "Oh yeah, sure, that's fine. Like if you ask me and you're kind about it that way,
right.
absolutely go ahead."
Right.
Yeah.
Because I think some people are just rude because they're rude, for sure, and they just have no sensitivity to it.
Right.
But I think some people, like, for instance, and I noticed myself doing it now, I try to stop, like, putting my hand on someone's chair when I'm talking to them. And to me, it's like putting my hand
Oh,
on their back. But they didn't tell me that they'd like me to be touching them. And their chair is a part
yeah.
of who they are, right? So, like, really, like, I should be
True.
more sensitive to that and give them more space. I don't really love people touching me all the time, and it's like things
True.
like that where it's like taking a step back, having more recognition. And I just think
Hmm.
there's become this stigma where people don't like to talk about it, but for most of my clients, they don't mind talking about it. More so, they just don't like when
Right.
people are like either too uncomfortable to talk about it or try to help
Hmm.
too much when they didn't ask if they needed help. Like they could do it themselves, and
Right.
now you're actually in their way because you're trying to help them. You know?
I mean, yeah, and for me, if I'm comfortable with somebody, like if you touched my chair while we were talking, that wouldn't seem weird to me at all because
Yeah.
I know you.
Yeah.
If you were just a random person who just like I've had it happen in a bar where somebody like body checks my chair as they go by, and I'm just like, oh my god, you're gonna knock me over.
Right.
And I've also had people who just like lean an arm like on my chair, and I'm just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it's
As if,
not
as if
furniture.
you're there to hold them up. It's like,
Yes, exactly.
no.
But then also, people who ask things like, "Oh, so like, what happened to you?" And I'm just like, "What happened to? Hi, what's your name?"
Right.
I'm
Right.
like
That's
you
like,
don't know my name yet, and you're asking about the most traumatic moment of my life. Like, what?
yeah.
Yeah. So those are the kind of things that are frustrating. But if somebody just goes like, "Oh, hey, like, I was just really curious. Could I ask a question?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure,
Right.
that's fine."
Right.
But no, it's when I see those comments online, in a weird way, when I was first injured and I started realizing that there were people like that out in the world, it really upset me. And so I would look at these posts and I would respond back and I would get really, really upset and feisty and everything. And Sam would tell me, like, get off of there. Stop responding to these people. What are you doing?
Mhm.
And I was like, you know what? I'm doing this because I feel like I need to train myself to handle this. I feel like I need to get a tougher skin and start looking at these people for what they are. And if they're going to be trolls, then fine. Go ahead. Be trolls. I'll troll you back.
Right.
Yeah.
And honestly, like it's a reflection on them. Like I feel like that's
Yeah.
like the one thing you have to stick in your mind where
Yeah.
it's like, this is a reflection of them. This is not a reflection on
Hmm.
anybody else.
At the end of the day, you're the kind of person that's going to be mean to somebody online, and I'm not.
Right.
And that says everything we need to know. But the video that I posted last week was about, of course, DEI and affirmative action and all that. So I knew I was poised. I knew there was going to be something weird coming.
Yeah.
And as soon as I put out the short, in only a few hours, I got several comments from angry white men. And as soon as I opened it up and I saw it, I was like, oh, the white men are angry. And I was like, yes, let's go. Honestly, their comments were so funny. I mean, they're terrible, but they're so funny.
And number one, I don't know like why people feel the need to do it, but also like one thing that I've noticed about all your content is that you use like resources, right? You're not just like making up statistics and things like that. You're doing your research, you're looking it up. Like, I guess I never really understand when people argue with statistics. It's like,
oh yeah,
arguing, like just
absolutely like numbers, stats, facts from
right.
well-researched
very
stuff.
factually, matter of factly. You're not going on these emotional tirades. You're saying these are the problems, and this, this is the statistics, and this is what needs to be addressed. So when people get very upset about it, I'm like, you're just emotionally responding. You're not actually recognizing what she's saying. Right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I will at some point do a video on this because there were a couple of ones where I'm just like, what are you even talking about?
Right.
Like that doesn't even
It's not relevant.
like
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of my favorites was somebody saying, it's because we put in the hours, miss. And I'm like, ooh, miss. You called me a young unmarried woman. I'm
What does
shaking
that
in my boots.
like? That is ridiculous. But
Which, first of all, I'm not either one of those things. But
yeah,
as if that's going to really get me.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff is, I see it online, and there are certain ones that still do make me angry, but for the most part, I'm just like, okay, I feel like I've gotten used to this, and I know how to respond and everything. The funniest thing is when you just respond by just like, I have no idea what you're talking about. This doesn't make any sense.
Right, because 90% of the
Yeah.
time it doesn't, right?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, and every once in a while, it's like I genuinely can't tell, is this a real person or is this a bot? I'm not sure. And that's the funniest thing is when you can't even tell if it's a human.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. It's like, I'm not,
Yeah.
this literally makes no sense to the point that it might be a robot.
Yeah,
But,
totally. So that's definitely our hope with, of course, all that stuff is still going to be out there. There's still going to be crappy people out there. But if you're going in the 10%, we're going to make sure that all the crappy people get kicked out. So you just tell us who they are and we'll kick them out.
and that's what's so amazing. You're trying to create a safe environment for people to connect and to have resources and to get, just so many things that they need. And I just think I've said this from the beginning. I think it's going to be amazing because I think it is so, so, so needed. I really do. And I think a safe space where people can talk about it and can learn from each other.
Yeah.
And that can be monitored in a sense that it is safe and kind and there's not judgment toward it. I think the idea of being able to join that, for instance, right when you're in Kessler or whatever rehab may be, and you can find people that you do relate to who are similar to you, like that experience can be totally different when you don't feel so alone.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and so we're going to work on creating a virtual space for that. You're going to work on creating an actual physical space for that.
Definitely.
Which I can't wait for you to tell me because now that you're actually looking in spaces and stuff, I'm so curious to hear. But I'll make sure
and
to
not
link,
too far from you, right in East Hanover. So.
Oh, you're kidding me. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. But yeah, so I'll make sure to link everything for your business down in the description.
Oh,
and
amazing.
Absolutely. And so that would be so cool to be able to go see that in person and help out however I can.
Of course. And I can't wait to just have a space for you to come and for everyone to meet. And I said to the clients that I have, I was like, for the grand opening, I want to do an early thing where clients come and they can just meet each other. And they were like, wait, that would be so nice. And I'm like, and then invite, anybody that you want to be there, but just to really start it off with what it's all about, because I just think that community for everyone is the most important thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's, I think that when you do manage to find that out there, because that's the weirdest thing about disability is that you don't realize that it is going to be that isolating. And so being able to get past that, I think it's the biggest hurdle.
Right. Oh, I obviously can't speak directly to it, but I see the theme amongst the people that I see. And I think it's just something that we just need to keep making more and more resources available so that we can eliminate to the extent that you can, right? You're never going to make this an easy transition, but the easier we can make it, the better for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I don't want to keep you anymore. You've had a really long day already, but this has been so great. And just make sure, let me know how everything is going. I would love to continue sharing with people how everything is progressing with your gym. And I'm sure I'll see you soon for another session.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. I'll see you soon.
Bye, Lexi. Thank you so much.
Bye.